Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another epic episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast. The hyper-anomalous esoteric research organization is bringing it today, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an unbelievably amazing episode today. Today we have none other than Richard D. Lewis, author, journalist, explorer. Richard is an author, a journalist, and a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, where he began his career in broadcasting. Creator of the award-winning Pentagon Channel TV news magazine, Air Force Space Today, he has won multiple Telly and Thomas Jefferson Awards. You'll discover a lot by what Mr. Lewis has to share. He is a graduate of the Defense Information School's Writing, Broadcast, and Public Affairs program. He has published bylines and or TV clips in Black Belt Magazine, FilmLink, Fangoria, Rocket Magazine, Geek Monthly, P3 Production Update, Campus Circle, Astro News, Airforce.mil, and it just goes on and on. The Pentagon Channel, Millsite Magazine, Santa Maria Times, and the Lompoc Record. Richard is also a published songwriter on Aska's Nine Tongues LP, writing lyrics of the acclaimed single The Dream, and he wrote screenplay treatments for Jeff Nichols of Black Sabbath, pitched to the Horror Channel in England. Richard is also creator of the award-winning Pentagon TV channel news magazine, Air Force Space Today, and author of The Paranormal Christian, 2 books in fact. This is going to be an absolutely epic episode. The Paranormal Christian delves into a lot of deep paranormal mysteries. I have so many questions. I've wanted to talk to Richard for quite some time. His Paranormal Christian series, Book 1, The Calling, is an absolutely amazing book, which asks, can a Christian be possessed? Do angels and demons dwell among us? And are they engaged in spiritual warfare? Book 2, The Quickening, is also in the Paranormal Christian series, and it goes into faith in God and belief in the supernatural, and that they go hand in hand. It's time to bring the paranormal back into the light with author Richard D. Lewis. Welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm so excited to talk to you. You have all the credentials necessary, and more importantly, the belief and faith system necessary to go into some areas that a lot of people just aren't willing to go into. You're a veteran, an author, a journalist. Let's start there and kind of give our listeners an idea where you came from and how this set the foundation for your research into the paranormal.
Sure thing, Ryan. Well, I got to say that I didn't start out looking for the paranormal. It's more like the paranormal came looking for me. And by the way, I use the word paranormal, but and we love it. I've always been interested in the paranormal. It's always all these things, the mysteries of the unknown. But it also ties into my faith life, being a Christian. And a lot of people in the church are a little bit nervous about this topic, but really the word paranormal simply means supernatural. And if you're a Christian, you look at the Bible, it's a supernatural testament. So I guess it's kind of a dual-hatted interest. I had the paranormal side, but then the thing I started to notice was really there's nothing contrary to the faith about being interested in the paranormal, because the faith is paranormal. So, but for me, my first real paranormal experience was noticing a voice speaking to me, and not like just voices to make people, because there are real mental illness type things that a person can have voices telling them things. But no, this is more like a soft, reassuring voice, as from childhood. Even before I had a formal understanding of religion or faith, there was this presence there, this knowing, and it actually saved my life. I go into this in my first book, The Paranormal Christian, Book 1, and I talk about the voice. And I was abducted as a child, not by aliens, by the way. I know paranormal folks might think when you say abduction, you mean aliens, but this was by humans. And I won't go into the full details of the story, but basically, it could have ended very badly for me. I was just a young child, and I was taken down the railroad tracks when I was walking to my grandma's house after school one afternoon, and a teenage boy abducted me and took me to this dilapidated shack along with an older man who was there. And the two of them had me there in the shack for a while. They were about to tie me up. And when they set me down and were about to wrap the rope around my wrists, there was a voice that said, "Run now." It was as clear as day. And I jumped up. It was a split second between when their hands kind of released for a moment as they were trying to tie me. And I burst out of that shack and into the sunlight, up the hillside to the railroad tracks, all the way down to Pine Street, and then crossing East Market Street to where my grandmother lived there in Greensboro, North Carolina, and into my grandma's welcoming arms. And both my grandma and my aunt were outside because I was late, and they were looking for me, wondering where I was. And, so as I recall, they called the police, and the police found the shack, but those two characters that abducted me were gone. I'm sure they probably figured that something, since I got away, that something might be coming. And I don't know whatever happened with them, but I know that for me, I'm so grateful because as I understand God, that was God that saved my life. So that was my first kind of awakening, really, into there being something more than what we see with our eyes in this physical experience.
Richard, that is a very, very amazing story. And, I can't agree more that a higher power, or the silent center of all things, has a still small voice. And I think it's Revelations 21, 1-7 that says, "And I heard a loud voice from the throne say," and it goes on. The amazing thing with you, Richard, is that you and I agree that, and a lot of people are not willing to talk about this, that faith in God and the belief in the supernatural go hand in hand. And those are your words. And I am of that opinion as well. And it is not to say that there isn't a lot of nefarious, malevolent, supernatural things going on. However, I do believe that the all-powerful has all power. You've had quite the exploration through life into the paranormal. How did you get started along this mysterious path?
Well, the thing is, like I said, I'm a lifelong Christian. I had an experience and a knowingness of God before anybody really defined what it was for me. And through religion, we're able to study what the traditions say and what the scribes and the faith leaders throughout the years have figured out and written down for our knowledge. But it all comes from an actual genuine experience. So, but the thing I was getting a bit disenfranchised was if you go outside the realm of what's revealed with the what if questions, like, for example, what about ghosts? And, the testament of Scripture to me reveals that ghosts are definitely a possibility. And the church doesn't say there aren't ghosts. In fact, the way the Catholic Church, for example, looks at ghosts as they believe that these are the spirits that are in purgatory that we were experiencing. And they're one of the few faith groups that actually talks directly about it. A lot of churches just don't want to get into it, or your more evangelical faith groups will just take a pat answer and say, well, it's all demons. And I think it's more nuanced and more subtle than that. And so you can say there's no such thing as ghosts, or which is what I always used to hear as a kid. But then all your family get-togethers and stories invariably turn to these experiences. If you bring the topic up, suddenly people start talking. Well, yeah, we lived in this house. We heard things. We felt things, stuff like that. And then to the point where you actually see something and experience it directly, then you want to start asking questions. So I was one of those people that was asking questions, and I noticed that a lot of fellow Christians were asking questions, and a lot of times the church was reticent to answer. Well, I didn't want to believe that the church didn't have an answer for these questions, so I began to study. I looked at what the scriptures say. I talked to folks. I interviewed people, and I looked at the example of the tremendous weight of witness testimony over the years, both with known cases and then what I was able to uncover myself, to see this is a true human experience, and it crosses all cultures and all time and all religions and faiths. So ghosts seem to be something that's going on. But if you look at the Bible, the Bible isn't contrary to ghosts. For example, the first inkling that you get is Jesus' disciples. When Jesus walked on the water, this is a story that we get in the scriptures, Matthew 14 and 26, for example. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Now, if there were no such thing as ghosts, right then and there, Jesus could have debunked the whole thing and said, "Hey, guys, come on, there's no such thing as ghosts. Check it out, it's me." But no, he said, it is I. You don't have to be afraid. But they said it was a ghost. So that right there implies, at least, it's implicit that there must have been a belief in ghosts, because that's what they thought he was. And then later on in the scriptures, we find out at the resurrection, which is, by the way, the most, if that isn't the most paranormal, supernatural / event in all of recorded history, I'm not sure what else is. I look at the Shroud of Turin, and we could do a whole show just on that and what that means. But once again, they thought he was a ghost. And the scriptures talk about this in Luke chapter 24. And while they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them, and he said to them, "Peace be with you." But they were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? Why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see." And then Jesus says, "A ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see I have." Again, that's Luke 24, 36 through 43. He says, a ghost doesn't have flesh and bones as you see I have. So he doesn't say there's no such thing as ghosts. He says a ghost doesn't have flesh and bones like me. Touch and see. So once again, if that doesn't it surely imply, it definitely shows that there was a belief in ghosts. And then I think there's a strong implication that ghosts would be something real. Why else would Jesus say it that way?
Totally. And, it's mind-blowing, the hypothesis, especially with a lot of the theories and the publicity surrounding the hearings that are being taken with UFOs and UAPs currently. I think it's really starting to hit the mainstream, and we're hearing a lot of ufologists and others commenting on this, and there's a wide variety of theories, and we may be dealing with a multi-dimensional paraphysical phenomenon that is largely indigenous to planet Earth. This is kind of disparaging, because a lot of these encounters, Valet and other ufologists, top minds in the field, have studied the phenomenon that when these quote-unquote alien abductions take place, when believers in a power higher than themselves yell out for help to Christ, or other characters of light from other religions, that these entities disappear. Have you found that in your research at all?
Oh, absolutely. In the faith, in the Christian faith, we're taught that the name of Jesus Christ is the name above all other names. And you can test this out even if you're not a believer per se. If you say that name in belief, you're actually showing a form of belief that has power. And we see that through the exorcism examples in the New Testament. But you have to have belief in the name and what it stands for, the power that it means. But yes, to your point, alien abductions have stopped through people calling on the name of Jesus. In Jesus' name, I command you to stop. In Jesus' name, or just Jesus help me, God help me, and these things stop. So if these were truly extra biological entities, beings like us from another world somewhere, then why would they have to pay any attention to the name of this carpenter that lived 2,000 years ago? No, that's the Son of God. It's real, and it's across all time. But yes, you talk about valet. So even even in the 1970s, they were already figuring this stuff out about the transdimensional viewpoint of extraterrestrials. I get into a lot of this especially in my second book, The Paranormal Christian, Book 2, which just came out. You can get it on my website. It's richarddlewisauthor.com. And again, Paranormal Christian, Book 2. And I've devoted almost 20% of the book just to the UFO problem. And it is a multifaceted, multidimensional issue because I'm not going to say that all UFO experiences are extra dimensional. I'm not going to say that there isn't a possibility of extraterrestrial, biological life like us out there. I mean, I kind of like to believe that there is, but we don't really know. And then a lot of the things that we see are explainable. Most UFO encounters are explainable, UAPs or UFOs, whatever they want to call them these days. I still like the classical term UFO because, especially if it's an actual object in the sky, there's nothing wrong with saying something's unidentified because that's exactly what it is if you don't know. And also, you mentioned that I'm a veteran. I'm an Air Force veteran, and as a civilian, also working for the Space Force. And I've been around U.S. Space Command and the Air Force. I've witnessed every kind of, high-tech craft in our inventory, from the F-117 to the B-2 bomber. Seen these items up close. I've seen them in flight. The rocket from the Delta IV Heavy to the Atlas. All these things I've seen actually fly. I've seen what the space station looks like in flight at night. I've been staring at the sky since I was a little kid. I've always been a stargazer. I love, and you just don't see these things very often. Once in a while, you might see something that's not explainable. Well, I think that a lot of the things that are actual verifiable objects are, if it's not something that's already in our inventory that we know about, perhaps it's something that we just don't know about yet that's in development. Ben Rich of Skunkworks said that there's things during his time that were 50 years ahead of anything that we knew about. And when you look at the time of Kenneth Arnold and his experience, seeing something that looked like saucers skipping across the sky, which is where the term flying saucer comes from, not because of a saucer shape per se. We already had flying wings well in development at that point in time. So that's my thought, is that a lot of the things people see are our own, black projects that are in development. And that's what that is. But when it comes to the actual, the contactee or abductee experience, you see there's a commonality there that we found through the works of Vallée and other thinkers through the years, that very closely matches the medieval tales of, nymphs and succubus and incubus, common experiences that the church fathers talked about. it was clear that these things were happening to people. And again, these are not just in the Christian faith. All faiths across the globe through time have had these experiences. So there's certain things you find. There's fear. There's sleep paralysis. It goes beyond those simple, biological explanation of sleep paralysis. There's the experience of beings, and whether these beings show themselves as what we would experience as the gray aliens or something like that, or the creatures of more demon-like creatures of legend. I think it's a common experience, and they're just wearing a different mask, and that would explain why you say, "Please stop in Jesus' name." And I would invite any of your listeners that have experienced this phenomena. I know it's a real experience. I know you're suffering. I don't say that it's not real, but try calling on the name of God, the name of Jesus Christ. Do it in belief. Do it in faith. When this is happening to you, and you watch what happens, these powers cannot stand against the power of Jesus.
Yeah, man, it is. I have had instances, not to go off on my own personal experiences, but I have had instances where, as yourself, I was brought up and had a belief not only in a higher power, who I choose to call God, but also a connection. And I've heard that small voice in times of need. Some of those times were very scary times on Red Rock Ridges, in Skinwalker territory. And, it's interesting that, as you said, this phenomenon that has occurred throughout recorded human history and in prior ages was ascribed to mythological or supernatural creatures is now taking on this UFO, UAP alien agenda. And I really like that you brought up the mask, Richard, because as some ufologists have called them messengers of deception. Yeah, you don't always know what it. You worded it a lot better than I can, but you don't know what you're dealing with until you know what you're dealing with. Isn't that true in some of these instances?
Oh, it is. And let me tell you, I didn't start out this journey looking for that to be the answer. I wanted it to be the other answer, and I still think that it's possible. I don't say that there's not alien life out there. There's you hear that it's becoming almost cliche now, where it's like, the universe is far too vast for us to be the only things in the universe. Well, we're not alone. We've never been alone, and that's what our faith reveals to us. That's what it's inherent. The Bible says that the heavens declare His handiwork. So people have always had an experience of something greater than themselves, whether or not it's defined through the Christian faith. There's always been this knowing that humans, you just look up in the sky, you look at the mountains, the trees, the clouds, you get this sense that there's something bigger than you at work, and then you get that knowingness inside, that still small voice telling you things. But on the other hand, even though I always had that, I've been interested in, I remember as a kid watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I talk about that in the prologue to my book 2, the Paranormal Christian book 2, and how it's always been an interest to me. And, I wanted it to be much like the mainstream ufologist. I wanted it to be the other thing. I wanted it to be those alien visitors. And I'm not saying that they're not there. And we look at the vastness of the cosmos. There's something like, 100 billion galaxies in the known universe. And every galaxy has something like 100 billion star systems. And you look at, and we seem to be at first glance, on the outer rim of an average galaxy with an average star. But when you look closer, you find out that there's nothing average at all about our placement of what we are. There's a supermassive black hole at the center of our universe. It's the furthest thing that we want to be around. But it's probably the engine of our galaxy and engine of all galaxies. Every car has an engine. You need the engine, but you don't want to get too close because the engine's pretty hot. It's kind of like that in the universe. And our average sized planet seems actually to be about perfect with our much too large moon that keeps our orbit and our tilt of our axis in check, regulates our tides and things. It shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have it being perfectly aligned to where it blocks out the sun exactly during for us to view the eclipses and things like that. And our yellow dwarf star happens to be very rare in the universe, those are not the common stars that you see. So the more you peer into it, the more you see the design there. And, living matter emerging from non-living is not even possible. It's mathematically impossible, but yet here we are. So you can't really say, well, because we're here, they must be there too. But on the other hand, I still look at it. It is a lot of space. But is it a wasted space? I mean, I don't know. You look at the atoms that make up our bodies, which come from 14 billion years of stars of birthing and dying. That's what we're made of, star stuff. But an atom is mostly empty space. But it's not wasted space. It's what's needed. So you can't really say it's wasted space. But then on the other hand, just experiencing God and knowing God and how God is, you look around the physical world, you see it's full of diversity. The oceans are full of life, teeming with, from where the sun reaches all the way to the inkiest, blackest depths. You find creatures that are bioluminescent, that create their own light, and you see this variety in the natural world. So I think perhaps the spiritual world is like that, and then perhaps the universe is like that. So I would like to believe that there's other life like us that are intelligent. And then you have to ask yourself questions like, well, what's their experience of what's soteriology mean to them, to use a theological term? How are we saved, if we're aliens? Pope Francis talked about this in 2014, about the possibility of baptizing aliens. And he kind of said it, in a sideways way to his clergy. But the media picked up on it because it was very interesting. But he said, who am I to stand in the way of the grace for them? But anyway, so yeah, I always thought that there was ETs out there that are like us, biological creatures in nuts and bolts spacecraft, as the ufologists believe. That's what or the mainstreamers believe. I always wanted it to be that. But again, the more I looked into the evidence, we really don't have the proof, for physical extraterrestrial beings visiting the Earth. There's a lot of stories, but I don't see a lot of proof. Now, I'm open to it, but when you talk about the actual personal experiences, once again, people usually experience these things at night. They usually happen while they're sleeping, They usually find themselves deposited back into their bedroom, nicely tucked in. I mean, this doesn't seem to be consistent with, biological entities doing these things.
I couldn't agree more. The tricksters love the darkness. And something that I want to point out is your website, richarddlewisauthor.com. Amazing website. And I think what's really the best thing about it is you are actually helping people, or trying to help people, as you said before. You have free access to a 3-video Deliverance from Demons series, and you are writing books on the subject that is going into, this not against, but you're opening the minds of people. I think there's a predominant explanation by, ufologists dealing with UAPs and other things. And it's important not to have blinders on when you're looking at this, because there's a lot going on. I go back to some biblical accounts, and whenever you're dealing with a power that is so great that it is stunning, I always come back to when the Nazarene was born, and an angel comes down amongst shepherds, and they're horrified. They're just horrified and stunned by its power. And this is an angelic being. This is not even a demonic being. And it's still basically, I cannot remember the wording. You probably know better than I, but it kind of had to say, fear not, like, calm down. It's okay. There's a lot of, there's a lot of power involved when you're dealing with both angels or demons. And this is something that it's hard for humans to grasp this.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That almost every account in the Bible where you see an angel appearing to someone, and the word angel simply means, as it's translated, it simply means messenger. And there's a whole hierarchy of angels. And I get into this in my first book, The Paranormal Christian, Book 1, and I lay out the entire spectrum. Usually, I feel like we here in our mortal existence, when we encounter angels, it's probably going to be a lower tier angel, something like a a personal guardian angel, which I believe the scriptures support, or maybe an archangel, but then you have these beings as they're defined that go all the way through the cosmic powers and principalities. These are beings of great power. The dominions, the thrones, they don't even leave God's presence. And then there's regional beings, and those are very powerful too. In the Bible, it talks about the prince of Persia and Saint Michael having to help Daniel overcome the prince of Persia. So we're talking about a being that was in charge of all of Persia. And if you really look into it, and I get into this in my chapter called the Other Gods in my first book, where you talk about like the Greek gods and things like that. You will see that the Mesopotamian peoples in the ancient times, they all were experiencing similar beings like the Baal that they talk about in the Bible, and Zeus. They both hold lightning bolts. Chances are that's the same being. You know what I mean? So, and that's on the higher tier. Now, on the lower tier with our experiences, you do see that. Fear or not, you often see that. But then there's the personal experience too, like when Peter was freed from prison by an angel, and he returned to the disciples. King Herod, threw him into prison. Back in those days, the religious leaders were very upset by this church movement. They didn't understand it. They didn't know that Jesus was the Messiah. Many of them did, of course, and they converted. But and really, the Christianity is we keep our ties with our Jewish brethren. That's why they call the belief system Judeo-Christian, because we feel like that we're the fulfillment. We're the children of Abraham as well. We feel like we're Israelites by being grafted in through Jesus. But anyway, when Peter returned, it says they didn't believe. Rhoda was actually the person that saw him, that heard his voice, I should say. And when she told the disciples, Peter's here, they knew he was locked up, so they didn't believe it. And they said, well, first they said, oh, you must be crazy. And then they were like, well, it must be his angel, And the scriptures say that the little children, their angels always behold the face of the Father. So there is a gentle side to angels as well, and you'll feel that prodding, by your guardian angel, and it's a lot less frightening. But I think the angels, they know how to maybe dim their light down enough to where they don't scare us and things like that. But yeah, when it comes to the nefarious means, they're powerful beings, but the power of God is much more powerful than that. And I'm not saying that every single thing that happens, I don't expect a demon to be under every rock. I certainly don't think that. But then we don't want to make the mistake of not believing in them either, because that's the greatest lie that Satan could ever pull on us. That's kind of a famous saying, the greatest thing was to convince us that he doesn't exist. Because at the end of the day, really, the agenda is there. So if you fall in lockstep with the agenda, it doesn't matter if you believe in it. And it's like, in the like the movie The Prophecy. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's just such a wicked, cool film, with Christopher Walken. And it's like, well, you don't have to believe in demons; they believe in you, kind of thing. So it is real. But like I say, I think the paranormal experience is far more nuanced and subtle and diverse than a lot of people on either side want to believe. And really, we have to explore this from an open mind. And when it comes to science definitely needs to have an open mind. The faith is same thing. We can't get stuck in dogma, because we look at what our investigation and our experience and it reveals to us. The thing that I find comfort in is that it doesn't conflict with the Bible. It doesn't conflict with the scriptures. That's what I want people to know, that you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. I mean, you can be interested in cryptids and UFOs and ghosts and angels and demons and all these kind of things, curious about it, about the mythologies, the traditions. All these things come from true experiences, and then you look at what does the Bible have to say about it. It doesn't conflict with these various things. In fact, you find that it's all correlated under one big picture. So that's what I'm trying to get across to folks with my book series, The Paranormal Christian. Book 1 came out in 2020. Book 2 just came out a couple of months ago. And hey, I invite all of you to explore if you're curious about it. If this speaks to you somehow, please. And also, once again, my website, richarddlewisauthor.com. Get to know me. I speak directly to the people that follow me on social media. I'm active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And even if you're not into this paranormal stuff, if you just like movies, I have a whole film review site that just is devoted to cool things like superhero movies, horror films, action movies, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot that we can talk about together.
Yes, and I think you're in a very unique position with your careers throughout your life, working with the Air Force, the space stuff. And, it is very interesting, in my opinion, kind of switching gears a little bit, that these messengers of deception, as some have called them, and I'm not trying to just keep it dark the whole way because there is light here as well, but the shape-shifting that is mentioned in a lot of mythology and folklore, and I mean the concept is, the idea
right.
of shape-shifting is one of the oldest forms of totemism and shamanism, as well as it's in all kinds of epic poems and literature, and the ability to physically transform oneself through an inherently superhuman ability, divine intervention or demonic manipulation. There's a number of ways to do this. What I find interesting is that a lot of ufology and experts in the UAP field will not look at this through the lens of biblical truth. They will look at everything else, but many of them, and I shouldn't speak for all of them because there are some that are open to it, but I think it's important to be open-minded to all things and not discount the Bible. What are your thoughts on this, Richard?
Well, the Bible is an amazing proof text for so many of these things. And, that's one of the things I really enjoy about, take, for example, the ancient alien, the ancient astronaut theory, and that, people like Eric von Daniken popularized. And then, of course, we've got the shows like the History Channel's show, Ancient Aliens. And I love that show because they take all of the Bible stories at face value. They don't try to discount them like skeptics do. They actually believe these things happen. It's just a little bit of a difference in what they say is the cause. Most of them think that all these things can be explained by biological entities and nuts and bolts spacecraft. And, I don't say that there isn't, like I say, the possibility of some of that. But you've got to just go where the evidence leads you. And when it comes to shape-shifting and things like that, the Bible is very clear that the devil can appear as an angel of light, and that's why Apostle John told us that we should test the spirits. And this comes from 1 John 4:1-6. He says, "Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God." And so most Christians say, well, you can't speak to spirits, they can't speak to you, these kind of things. There's all kinds of false beliefs that I debunk in my books, The Paranormal Christian, Book 1 and 2. But why would he tell us to test the spirits if we weren't going to interact with them? And once again, when it comes to things like say, the cryptids, like Bigfoot, for example, my initial thought and belief, what I would prefer to believe, but what it may be it could be two different things. Because I would rather, just like when I was a kid and I wanted to believe that the flying saucers were from another planet and they're biological, sentient beings like us, not, angelic or demonic or whatever. That's what I wanted to believe, but that may not be what we're experiencing. It may be, extra dimensional. And when it comes to this, it's the same thing with the cryptids and so forth. I would like to think that maybe Bigfoot, because, this creature or Sasquatch or the Yeti is experienced in, usually in remote regions, dense forests. I would like to think, well, maybe this is a descendant from our same family tree as Homo sapiens. Maybe this is a bipedal, a creature that's an ape-like creature that's a physical being that is just been hiding from us all these years and is tucked away in these forests, and that's why we really haven't encountered them directly, so to speak, or discovered them implicitly. I would like to believe that. That would be cool. The scientist in me wants that. I would just love to just touch one and see one, right? But then, why do they smell like sulfur? Okay, why do they mysteriously appear and disappear? Why are they so hard to catch? You see it 1 minute and then it's gone the next. Maybe these are exactly what we think they are. And then we've got all these stories from the various cultures that you mentioned, the native traditions, the spiritual traditions, the shamanic traditions, and then where they talk about skinwalkers and they talk about things, these strange beings, and we certainly can't discount the fact that they may be spiritual in nature. Maybe they're opening portals. Maybe that's what we explain. When you talk about dimensionality, that actually answers a lot of questions. The Apostle Paul had something that would seem to be like a near-death experience, where he talked about being carried to the third heaven and seeing things and experiencing things that he really couldn't, wasn't allowed to describe, or maybe he couldn't describe it because perhaps, like my friend Luis Monero told me, and I talked to him for my first book. He's an expert researcher in OBEs, out-of-body experiences. He says when you're in the other realms, this body, the brain, we don't have the hardware to download the software, so that's why they can't fully describe it, and that's why in the Bible it talks about streets of gold, pearly gates, things like that. Doesn't mean that it's a literal reference to literal, well, what is it, 24 karat gold, the 14 karat, it's not gold plated, right? It's heaven, it's got to be pure gold. No, I mean, it was talking about shimmering, cosmic things that, you experience in the spirit that you probably can't even describe in the physical. So yeah, it's really fun. It's really cool to study these things. And like I say, the thing I want to reassure Christians is that it's okay. It's okay to be interested in this stuff. And I want to tell the people from the more of the paranormal side that aren't really interested in the faith. Christianity is for everyone, and we don't want anyone to feel excluded. We people have had bad experiences. Human beings are fallible. The errors that some of our faith have made over the years, don't let that make you angry at God, because God is just pure love. It's love for everyone, and that's what you experience when you know Jesus.
Yeah, man. It is, anyone who has encountered strange events firsthand will quickly realize that one's worldview shifts. You begin to notice things that you didn't notice before. And a new book by George Knapp, I'm sure you've heard of it, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, an insider's account of the secret government UFO program. It goes into extensive government studies into anomalies such as abductions, wormholes, anti-gravity, invisibility, cloaking, and fusion technology, and the odd goings-on in many of these ranch-like areas, rural areas, dogs being vaporized, things appearing out of nowhere, manifesting from nothing. The government is taking this seriously. And with good reason, don't you agree?
They certainly seem to be. I mean, I think they've always had an interest in it. Going back to Project Blue Book and the predecessor, studies that led to Blue Book. There's always been this interest in. When it comes down to the military, I mean, there's a pragmatic interest because it's. If there are things in our skies, do they threaten our national security? That's what our defense leaders are always interested in. And I mean, they've never closed the door to the paranormal. I mean, remote viewers have been used in tactical ways by our government, and that's a known thing. And when it comes to the work of George Knapp, I think it's very, very impressive. I'm very fascinated how he broke the story on Bob Lazar, and I look at what Bob Lazar revealed about how these craft use anti-gravity to propagate. And the common thought in the ufologist community is that, people like engineers like Mr. Lazar used alien technology to reverse engineer spacecraft and so on. Well, maybe people like him were brought into this, and they just, they're fed a story, or they come up with, certain technology. Like I say, there's just not enough proof for it to go that far for me. I do believe that our science is way ahead of what we see. It's a known fact that we have a massive black budget that is beyond the oversight of Congress. There's things that are going on. Obviously the U.S. Navy has pilots and seamen have experienced things. That's what got a lot of this stirred up, and of course the New York Times and Leslie Kean and all those folks when they broke the ATIP story, which of course George Knapp is all over that, and the ASWAT I think it's called, and all of those other tertiary programs. Oh yeah, I mean, I think the government's very interested, and it's curious when you look at the papers and the things that have been studied. Anti-gravity, portal technology, all those kinds of things they're interested in. And what have they found out? What do they know? I mean, I would love to know, because I think it's like I think the rabbit hole. It's like Alice in Wonderland. I think you go down that rabbit hole. Are you going to take the blue pill or the red pill? Which one do you want to take? And I'm all about taking the red pill and just going down the rabbit hole and finding out what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. It is. There's a lot to be gleaned and learned from this. And George Knapp, I agree, deserves a lot of recognition. And I think it's also important to recognize Colm Kelleher and Bob Bigelow, who, in private conversations with Colm, he has mentioned things that he has called poltergeist activity. In his words, being brought back home by investigators. This sounds very demonic. And it is, I think Robert Bigelow, again, he has had a long interest in the paranormal, and he's probably spent more money than a lot of the newer generations have made off of the paranormal. And that conversation, the poltergeist activity conversation, being brought home with investigators, something I believe they call the hitchhiker effect. It's very poltergeist-like, very demonic, and it seems as if these programs are starting to realize that there's more to this. And I think your books go deeply into this. Being a Christian, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how your career has helped you research and investigate the paranormal?
Well, once again, when it comes to the paranormal, I look for, the normal. I mean, paranormal is becoming the new normal, but, supernatural means, unexplained. And the more we learn, the more we can explain things. But, if you hear a sound, you hear it could be wind blowing, the old houses creak, water drips, trees make shadows in the wind. Most paranormal things are explainable, and that certainly goes into the UFO experience as well. So that's the first thing I would look for. Then if it is something that is, an actual phenomena that's, appears to be a tangible thing, I would look for something natural like weather. I hate to say it, but the, good old swamp gas, maybe it's swamp gas. Nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. But, Venus, if it looks, there's all kinds of things, meteors, there's all kinds of astronomical explanations. And then I said, like I said before, there's actual things that we know about that, but you might not know about, but it's a spacecraft or it's the space station, different things that look strange. But then that's explainable, or maybe technology that we don't even know about. If you saw a flying wing back in Kenneth Arnold's time, you would certainly think that's a UFO. And my experience with the Air Force and having seen the B-2 fly, it really does look like something alien. It's very stealthy. They call it the stealth bomber for a reason. It makes almost no noise until it's right on top of you. It forms like a fingernail on the horizon, so you can barely see it. It has this strange shape, and it can literally bomb targets while it's not even seen because it's so high in altitude at the time. So these things would seem extraterrestrial. And then when you get into the spiritual side of things, that's what I really love about what George Knapp is doing with the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, is the fact that finally it's coming together. Because for a long time, and this is nothing new, this extra dimensional viewpoint has been, since Vallée was talking about it, in the early 1970s. And but ufologists tended to divide into camps over this and say, well, you're either extra biological entities, nuts and bolts spacecraft believer, or you're extra dimensional type believer. But no, we're studying these things. We're seeing things that are flying around. We're wondering what they are. They seem to be physical, but despite our best efforts, they're having these paranormal, like you said, poltergeist experiences. If this was biological entities like us, we're aliens too. I mean, we've already stepped out into other worlds. We physically landed on another world. When you think about the many times that we've stepped on the moon, but we're putting probes on asteroids now. We've revisited the outer planets. We've sent probes out of our solar system. We're the aliens now. Okay, so, but how do you explain these paranormal experiences? If these are beings like us, even if they are advanced by millions of years, as many people believe, why would there be paranormal experiences associated with these things? And again, when you get to this, especially when you start talking about the contactees, why, like Adamski back in the early days, we're hearing stories of beings from Venus and from Jupiter, the planets. And now we know, as our science grew, we learned that, well, these planets are not inhabited. So the stories go out into the galaxy, and now they're out into other galaxies. So these beings seem to be changing their stories over time, because I don't want to say that all these contactees over the years, I don't want to call them liars. That would be very disrespectful. I mean, there are obviously hoaxers in this community that we've always had, but there are people that are truly suffering from experiences that deserve our sympathy, because it's a very real thing that's happening to them. But I mean, come on, if you're taken aboard a spacecraft and you go visit another planet, we're not going to see you again, because we can't get around Einstein. We can't get around the laws of physics. If you travel, I mean, you space and time are interwoven. You can't go visit these reaches without long spans of time. You can't just go to these planets and get deposited back. And then if you are, then why are you neatly tucked into your bed? Especially if you were subject to some of these horrible things that people experience. So, no, I'm very encouraged by the fact that this paranormal part of it is being acknowledged. The researchers are looking at it and they're saying, yeah, this is part of it. This is, and so you can't cut that out of the story. It's part of the story. So we have to look at where the evidence leads. And guess what? Maybe, just maybe, the evidence is going to lead us all the way from our science, all the way back around to our anecdotal traditions, to the shamanic traditions, to the faith revealed to us in the Bible, and to what we knew all along.
Yeah, man, it is amazing how you have delved into this mystical exploration of the paranormal phenomena through the lens of the Bible. I really appreciate that. And in your words, I love this line. If you believe in the Bible, you already have faith in the unseen, the supernatural worldview of our ancestors. And, at times, I wish I had a time machine or a way to jump space time or something like that. I've kind of crystallized myself in a small little area doing some research, and there's times like this morning I had to overnight a small research tool that they needed like yesterday. And we're really up against amazing, amazing, curious mysteries. And I think that you are on the cutting edge of this. You've answered many of my questions. I hope listeners have gathered a lot. And you've had a long and impressive career with the United States government, and I thank you for your service. Your unique worldview is extremely 100% on point on many subjects. And let's go yeah, absolutely. It's well deserved. Let's go into where listeners can get help with demonic issues, read your books, and support your magnificent work.
Well, Ryan, thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate it. And, again, if you look at our Christian creeds, it's right there. I believe in God, the maker of heaven and earth, and all things visible and invisible. Right there from our ancient creeds, you see, and invisible. Wait a minute, what did they put in there? See, there's more to it than meets the eye. And yeah, so I just want to be able to bridge that gap, to bring all people into the fold, and help people to understand that there are answers to these things. So again, my website, richarddlewisauthor.com. That's richarddlewisauthor.com. My book series is called The Paranormal Christian. Book 1 and Book 2 are both available on my website, as well as Amazon and Barnes & Noble, all the other booksellers. You can find my books there. But richarddlewis.com, you can find out all things about, you can experience my Deliverance from Demons video series. You can sign up for that if you join my if you sign up for my website, and everything's free. All the resources, past podcasts that have been recorded are there, plus all of the things that I do with news, current events, film reviews, all kinds of goodness you can find there at my website, richarddlewisauthor.com.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. You're a master at your craft, and yeah, amen, man. I'm glad that you're doing it the way you're doing it.
Well, thank you for what you do, Ryan. Hero Paranormal, you're my hero, bud. I really appreciate you.
Man, oh man, do I appreciate Richard D. Lewis coming on, discussing his amazing career. He is the creator of the award-winning Pentagon Channel TV news magazine, Air Force Space Today. He's won multiple Telly and Thomas Jefferson Awards. What an investigator, researching from an angle that others are scared to research from. It's pretty amazing that, his stories, his look at this subject, and the tools that he's offering through his website, definitely something all listeners should take a look at. Great books on the subject matter. It's interesting. The entertainment industry has produced huge numbers of television shows, movies that involve UFOs, aliens, and there has been a lot of money made in this arena. Yet many have their goal to help. And Richard is one of those. He is the creator of an amazing website, an amazing book series, and he's a legitimate helper of humanity. Clearly, he is pointing at a little bit something different when it comes to the UFO phenomena, something that I think is very important, the way that he views it. And one thing is obvious. UFO phenomena is quite complex for a variety of reasons. There's no one explanation that can even vaguely attempt to explain what's going on. It is a lot of perception. Alien contact and abductions are a very dark and real thing, and this has permeated our mainstream reality through various sources. And I'm finding that the lives of people that have been affected by this, they quite literally have been broken. And it's important to realize that beyond fear, the anguish, the pain, we do live in a world that is fairly broken. It's a broken world. We have wars, we have poverty, we have hunger, we have abuse of various sorts, and there is a light. There is a light. And I think that Richard's books and his work shine brightly and offer this light to people so they can have the ability to manipulate this energy to their benefit, please check out his website, richarddlewisauthor.com. Check out his books, his free tools to help those in need. Man, so excited that I got to talk to him and so excited where the conversation went. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off.